It's as if Toshiba angered the Greek gods and caught a reverse Midas touch. Instead of gold, everything they touched turned to ash. They championed HD DVD right as the entire planet switched to Blu-ray. Then they paid an insanely criticized premium to buy the US nuclear firm Westinghouse in 2006, betting their entire fortunes on a global nuclear renaissance. Then came March 11, 2011. A massive earthquake knocked out power at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The tsunami flooded backup generators, causing reactors to overheat and eventually started the worst nuclear meltdown since Chernobyl. The disaster froze the nuclear industry overnight and dragged Toshiba into total financial ruin. Out of this nightmare of generational corporate incompetence rose Kioxia. To pay off those self-inflicted radioactive debts, Toshiba spun off their memory division for absolute scraps to Bain Capital in 2018. Now, Kioxia just surpassed Toyota as Japan's most valuable company. To understand how a discarded division turned into a financial mega corporation, you have to look at the breathtaking sequence of blunders executed by Toshiba, and it all started by punishing the man who invented the future. Dr. Fujio Masaoka is the reason you have a smartphone in your pocket. In the 1980s, he invented NAND flash memory while working at Toshiba. This is the exact architecture underlying every solid-state drive and modern AI data center. It is arguably one of the most important technological breakthroughs of the 20th century. And Toshiba's management absolutely hated it. They were completely obsessed with magnetic hard drives and heavy machinery. They viewed Masaoka's tiny silicon chips as a direct threat to their existing cash cows. They chose to marginalize him immediately. They stripped him of his subordinates, moved him to a windowless office, and demanded he stop working on Flash. Frustrated by the total lack of recognition, Masaoka eventually quit in 1994 and settled for a mere $758,000. American competitors like Intel happily swept in, commercialized the technology, and generated billions. Toshiba eventually caught up, but it was far too late. Toshiba's toxic ego infected everything. I think Toshiba's downfall truly began when they blindly gambled the farm on HD DVD. This is the early 2000s. Sony backed Blu-ray while Toshiba stubbornly championed a proprietary HD DVD format. Toshiba thought they could win by selling cheaper standalone players, ignoring that Sony possessed far greater resources and incentive. To win the war in one swift strike, Sony swallowed massive hardware losses and embedded a Blu-ray player into every single PlayStation 3. Virtually overnight, millions of households were equipped with the format. Yet, Toshiba refused to give up, blindly fighting a war they had already lost. When Hollywood studios finally defected to Blu-ray, Toshiba was forced to abruptly kill the format, eating $1 billion in totally avoidable losses. After that, they decided to play even harder, and this time with nuclear energy. When Toshiba bought Westinghouse in 2006, the market value was estimated at under $2 billion. Toshiba somehow entered the bidding war against reality and paid $5.4 billion. They paid nearly 3 times what the company was worth just to flex their corporate muscles and show how sure they were of nuclear power. Then, as we all know now, Fukushima happened in 2011. Global reactor orders went to zero. Westinghouse began hemorrhaging cash. Here, a sane management would have cut its losses. But Toshiba did not have a sane management. They doubled down, hid their bleeding, and kept building, and by doing so, engineered one of the largest accounting frauds in Japanese history to cover up their failures. From 2008 to 2014, successive presidents issued impossible profit targets to division heads. They forced each subordinate to cook the books, artificially inflating operating profits to over $2 billion. When the scandal broke in 2015, Toshiba's stock went into a freefall. Executives resigned in shame. The hollowed-out company was immediately hit by the bankruptcy of its Westinghouse subsidiary, taking on another $9 billion in losses. To survive their own financial ruin, Toshiba accidentally built a semiconductor god. Facing total bankruptcy, Toshiba had to sell off the only thing making them real money. So in June 2018, they sold off a majority stake in their memory division to Bain Capital for $18 billion. They rebranded these scraps into Kioxia. The company was chugging along, barely making a profit until the generative AI boom hit in 2024. You see, to train large language models, tech giants have to feed them oceans of data instantaneously. That requires absurd amounts of high-capacity, lightning-fast, solid-state storage. Because of Dr. Masaoka's original invention, Kioxia practically owned the foundational DNA of NAND flash. When massive hyperscalers panicked to build new data centers, they realized Kioxia was one of the only suppliers on Earth capable of meeting their insane demand. Kioxia became a mandatory toll booth on the AI highway. The financial reaction was violent. Kioxia launched its IPO in December 2024 at a $5.6 billion valuation. Since its initiation, the stock has exploded by over 4,000%. However, the people who won't see a single cent of this gold mine are Toshiba's public investors. You see, Toshiba still holds a massive chunk of Kioxia's shares. That stake is theoretically worth over $100 billion today, which is more than Toshiba was ever worth. You'd think that this monster rally would save Toshiba's public stock price, but it doesn't, because Toshiba is no longer a publicly traded company. After years of mismanagement, furious activist investors demanded change. Because of that, a private consortium took Toshiba private for $14 billion in late 2023. $14 billion, when their stake in Kioxia would just be worth over $100 billion. They delisted the company from the Tokyo Stock Exchange. The retail investors are completely gone. The only people reaping the rewards of this historical surge are private equity firms. Bain Capital stands to bank an estimated $15 billion in pure profits, while retaining a huge chunk of equity and control. The financial windfall of the century, created by Toshiba's own flash memory division, was surrendered to private equity just moments before the AI revolution took off. In this whole story, I can say that one thing is still intact in Toshiba's legacy, and that is that everything they believed in turned to ash, and the one thing they threw away turned to gold. This is Konichi Value. Thank you so much for watching.